If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to the Liberty Without Compromise broadcast, the only live, local, politically conservative program in Kootenai County where we expose the political power players, politicians, and social influencers. We're your hosts, Dan and Dawna Wilson. I'm here to screen your questions and comments. Tonight, we'll be taking your calls. That number is 208-366-4671. Right down there at the bottom of your screen. If you're like me and you get stage fright, so you're not going to call in, you can always participate throughout the program by submitting your questions and comments right there into the comments section. And if you're watching live, be sure to click the share button on whichever platform you're watching, whether that's Facebook, YouTube, or X. And if you happen to be listening back on our podcast, be sure to catch us live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. A reminder, opinions expressed are ours alone, that of Dan and Dawna Wilson. And their guests. Our guests' opinions are their opinions, not necessarily the opinions of our advertisers, sponsors, or affiliates. And now here's Dan Wilson.
Good evening. So glad you could join us tonight. Friends from around Kootenai County in the region, across Montana, south into Boise and Twin Falls, Eastern Washington, and around the Fruited Plains. We're so thankful.
And also in Hawaii.
In Hawaii, yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to our friends, Lori.
Yeah.
We're so glad you could join us tonight. We have a lot to go over. What does it look like when a Republican attempts to become an anarchist to prove a point? We're going to cover that. We're going to show you that failure.
Oh, it sounds like entertaining.
It's entertaining.
Like it's gonna be entertaining.
I don't know that it could be considered a success. So we're going to show you what it looks like, however, and you can be the deciding judge on that, I guess. LPRs, they are here to stay in Kootenai County at least for a year. The shocking vote that put that over the finish line, we're going to show you that and have a little more discussion about that as well. And we have special guests tonight.
We do. We've got Dan and Elsa from Watchmen Ministry. They released a statement last week regarding their experience with a local church and pastor, along with some of the friction they received from the KCRCC, all related to their Watchmen Ministry, because they're offering a nonpartisan resource to Kootenai County voters. So that's going to be an exciting conversation. We've got them in the queue for a little bit later on in the broadcast.
Yeah. Well, you know, we want to encourage you to follow as often as you can and to spread the message of liberty without compromise. You can do that by subscribing to our X channels, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, X. What did I miss? I said them 2 or 3 times.
TikTok.
TikTok.
Yeah. Dan has created quite a wave on TikTok.
Really?
And it's not all bad. Like, you wonder, is it liberals over on TikTok and there's no conservatives? That's not really true. They're open to the message. I was going to show, too, we've been putting a lot of work into the Liberty Without Compromise website. So Dan mentioned subscribing on our social channels. That's important. But also subscribe here, right here, bottom of any page or contact page at libertywithoutcompromise.com. That's going to put you on the email list so we can keep you apprised when we've got articles that are newly published, events coming up, sometimes exposés and research that we've done that we want you to be the first to know. So
and we don't squelch First Amendment, free speech, freedom of expression.
Yes, we will have contributing authors at libertywithoutcompromise.com that don't necessarily share the same worldview and same opinions as Dan Wilson. Yeah. We're there for open conversation. Oh, and you can also get your Liberty Without Compromise apparel right there on the website. Yeah. Lots of new stuff, hats, shirts. We had somebody say, well, I want tumblers and mugs. So we got you covered. If you want a bandana for your dog, we got you covered.
You know, this message, Liberty Without Compromise, started when I was running for sheriff in 2024 against incumbent Republican sheriff in name only, Robert Bob Norris. And as I was traveling the circuit and speaking with people all over the county and across the nation, I was reminded that we need men and women in this day and age that are not part of a faction, that are not Democrat, that are not Republican, that are not conservative, that are not libertarian, but Americans who truly believe that we must preserve liberty without compromise. The founders said it, life, liberty, property. Of course, they were coining that phrase from John Locke 100 years before them. And let me tell you, you cannot have life and you cannot have property if you don't have liberty to pursue those things and the liberty to protect yourself from those that would attempt to deprive you. So my message today, along with Dawna, has grown stronger. I, of course, was not successful in my bid for sheriff of Kootenai County, but the corruption that I uncovered along with Dawna as I was running this race, the corruption is still there. The bad actors are still there. And we will not give up. We will continue to take this fight to those that are doing wrong as long as we have breath. And I encourage all of you out there in Kootenai County, get off the couch. Trump is in office. That does not mean that you get to take a break, because many of you have adopted that. Trump's is in office, and you know you're going back to drinking your Slurpees and eating your popcorn, watching Netflix. You need to be more vigilant now than ever. And to my friends, you know that I am not a die-hard Trump man, because I believe that all politicians must be continually watched. It is up to us, those that consent to be governed, to stay vigilant, to make certain that every leader, no matter what their affiliation is adhering to that great book, that document, the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights, along with the Declaration of Independence. They are married. No matter what the progressives say, you can't divorce them. The Constitution is not living and breathing. It transcends time and places. So I continue to bring this fight. And of course, I'm digging into Bob Norris, Sheriff Bob Norris, every chance I get. And of course, we had quite a debacle the past several weeks. Many of you have been following. It's gone national, probably international. A town hall that the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee was hosting for state legislators that are supposed to represent all people, not just the Republicans, at a Coeur d'Alene high school. Bob Norris went in hands-on with a lady that was protesting, and that, of course, is blown up everywhere. But, you know, there's other boneheaded things that he is still doing. One of those was recently, the decision was made by him and or his command to release a video for positive PR for the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. And this was a attempted suicide that deputies were able to thwart. Now, I can tell you from my years of experience as a police officer, I've been in those deputies' shoes, and I understand how difficult that situation is and how important it is with the response and the de-escalation that those deputies and all police officers must enact when you are dealing with somebody that is at the bottom, the rock bottom of their life. And while I applaud the deputies for coming in and doing what we expect those men and women to do day in and day out, I take exception to the sheriff's office patting itself on the back. If a newspaper wants to do that to you, that's fine. If a citizen wants to bring it out, that's fine. But to use this success story to further and bolster the ego of the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office is flat out wrong. And it is even worse when these extremely poor judgment deputy, the command staff of the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, whoever it was that signed off on showing the video of this man who was in his mental health crisis at his lowest point. How dare you do that, Norris? How dare you? And of course, there were many in the community that agreed with me, that thought it was extremely poor judgment to do this. It should never have been done. And then there are those that disagree. They believe that by my coming out and trying to show a contrast leader to what Bob Norris is doing and saying, this is wrong. Well, we've got our haters on that as well. I think we have one of those comments that we're just going to show you real quick, and I want to respond to it because this is typical of the Bob Norris sycophants in this county. And I think, Donna, do you have that showed up there? Up. You can probably read it better than I can.
Oh, I don't know that I can. Here we go. So you received a comment over on Instagram that says, when are you going to start talking about yourself? If you're thinking about running for sheriff again, we want to know your qualifications, not hear about this smear campaign on Norris. What did he do to you? What did he even do to you?
Well, it became sheriff of Kootenai County, for starters. No, I mean, that is a typical response by the same group that does this over and over again. In this instance, this is an 18-year-old girl who is a aspiring, I don't know, journalist. What would you call her?
I think, maybe political commentator, journalist. Yeah.
So she was, feeling her oats, thought that she was going to plumb me up on that post. But I wanted to remind her that, we gave you over an hour of my time, valuable time during an election. You didn't have any of your stuff together. Your equipment didn't work. It was a discombobulated interview, but we stuck through it the entire time to give you the respect that we believe that you deserved. Answered every single question, including those questions. And you know what? You can say all you want that your dad didn't submit them, but they happen to be the exact same questions your dad was barraging all of our social media with all during the campaign.
Yeah. And I've always said on the live streams, we welcome all comments, even those opposing views, but the dad in this instance,
who's an attorney in Spokane, went to law school in Spokane.
Yeah, and wanted to chide you for not being a local Idaho resident, as if you were so far away. Mm-hmm. Well, you've been a lifetime in this region. But I mean, what he was doing in the comments section when he jumped on that live stream months ago was, I compared it to
spamming.
The guy in high school or middle school spitting, doing spitballs through a straw across the room. I mean, it's like, okay, you got our attention, and you've been successful at being a nuisance. But I mean, how did that forward any kind of conversation? And did you ever reach out to meet with Dan personally? Go
did
toe
everything
to toe
through his daughter.
If you were really looking to get answers, and this was all the campaign long for people who were really carrying the same message.
Yeah, they all had the exact same talking
It's the same.
points,
And it's like, no, nobody gave me these questions to ask. Well, that's
they've now
funny.
broken
They're
down
the
to
same.
having to send an 18-year-old girl back out to carry the water. So you know where to find me, attorney. If you are so desperate to talk to me that you can't do it yourself and you got to do it through your daughter, hit me up. I got an email too. So,
Yep. Hey,
what does it look like when a Republican tries to make a statement? There's this group that says that the event that had the famous disruption, the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee Town Hall legislative, I'm losing my train of thought.
Okay.
Our legislators were there.
It's a mouthful.
I know.
Yeah.
And that word gets me every time. They were there to provide updates as to what's going on at the state capitol, what's going on in the legislature, what bills are being submitted, what bills are being heard, what bills are being shelved. And it was, advertised to the public in Kootenai County, come meet your legislator. Then, of course, you have Democrat operative, and I don't know if operative is the correct word. I know that she's run for office several times, but what we have is a disruption that took place of sorts. And then the sheriff came in and he put his hands on her. We're going to talk about that more in a second. I contend, along with other experts, that the seizure was a violation of her Fourth Amendment rights and most likely a First Amendment as well. The courts are going to decide that. But the outcry by the right, by the Republicans, those that are close to the KCRCC, contend that Chief White, when they dropped charges against this woman protester, that they're playing politics and that they are siding with the leftists. And I contend and say that is not the case. When you look at the facts, when you read the reports, when you understand totally what was going on. But you have those that say, well, we're going to test this out. We're going to find out what happens when a Republican disrupts a town hall. But in this case, this protester wasn't protesting a town hall. In fact, it was a Coeur d'Alene City Council business meeting, wasn't open for the public in a Q&A session. And we're going to watch this individual. His name is James Clayton. He is the husband of Charity Joy or Charity Miser. I'm not even certain what name her last name really is. Charity runs the Kootenai Journal, that alternative newspaper that you find all over in coffee houses throughout Kootenai County. So her husband and her are sitting in this audience along with, cameraman Jeremy, who's at every event.
Yeah.
I assume that's him since he put it on the channel. So let's go ahead and watch this video and see what happens when you have the chief of police of Coeur d'Alene Police Department speaking before the city council, ironically, to get approval from the city council to share license plate reader data with the Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA. So go ahead and play that video and we'll...
The Coeur d'Alene Police Department has been using automated license plate reader technology now for over a decade. This information is used by our agency to solve a variety of crimes, including homicide.
Does that include free speech?
One of the most recent
Does that
cases.
include free speech?
Does
that include free speech, Chief?
I'll continue.
That's right.
Individuals in the community that were concerned about
And come down and have a talk
our
with them.
camera systems. So
This is say have a good day. Yeah. You're a worthless piece of shit.
Will you see if I
I'm
can
those
talk?
fucking stupid law enforcement. You make the top of the list. You know that? You don't know anything. You're a fucking leftist tyrant. You don't know the laws. You want to pretend like you do, but you don't know shit. Fucking asshole. That's right, I said fucking asshole.
I'm gonna go now.
You're gonna go now? Bye.
You can go back in there, but don't disrupt the meeting. You could be arrested for trespassing. I'm
Yeah?
telling you that you're not allowed to
You're
go back.
like that. We're
For the
gonna bring
duration of the
arrested for trespassing. You better go. Fuck.
No, have them continue. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Hope you rot in hell.
Sir, what were you angry about with the police chief?
They double standards. You know, we want to see what he's all about. You know, he let that woman who disrupted a town hall go after she assaulted several people and
You're talking about
disrupted
the
everybody
Republican-
else's rights.
the Republican
So I
town-
thought I would just disrupt his rights a little bit. Okay, so I'm talking about the KCRCC town hall that they had a week and a half ago, where Teresa Bornfall and her cohorts disrupted the meeting, abusing everybody else's free speech rights and rights to assemble. Okay, laws are there to protect people's rights against other people abusing their right. So she has the right to free speech, but she doesn't have the right to abuse everybody else by doing that. So with rights come consequences. She was asked that there were rules, she disobeyed them. The sheriff, she knew who it was, had her lawfully ejected under the statutes of Idaho. And he let her go after she assaulted 2 people. So obviously he doesn't know the law. He has no Title 31, Chapter 22, Sheriff's Rights and Responsibilities. Okay? And he doesn't follow the law. Instead, what he's going to do is he's going to try and pursue innocent people who are only doing their job. Because if the sheriff had come up to me and asked me to eject her, under state law, I could have physically taken her and taken her out of the building.
Like the security team.
And I could have used my civilian, my civil arrest rights to do that under Title 19. What I'm tired of is I'm tired of law enforcement acting like the average citizen doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I'm not the average citizen. I spent a long time in the military and in law enforcement. And he is a disgusting example of what a law enforcement officer should be, let alone a leader.
Second that.
Okay. So we're going to put up a picture real quick of who this guy is. This is James Clayton, who is husband of Charity Joy that runs the Kootenai Journal. A couple interesting things. He said a lot there.
There was a lot going on.
He's a little angry.
Yeah.
A little angry.
Yeah, we forgot to forewarn of the foul language. I apologize for that.
So he's a little upset. He's inside this it's not even a town hall. It's a business meeting for the Coeur d'Alene city of Coeur d'Alene, and so they were asking permission, Chief White was, of the council to allow the Drug Enforcement Agency access to the LPR data. And of course, sitting right next to him, we didn't play that video, but the video right before that shows Charity Joy sitting right next to James. So they're getting ready to cause this disruption. Then Charity is going to probably pin something about, the unequal treatment. But I know that's really hard, Charity and James. I mean, first of all, I've ever heard you were in law enforcement. I'm really curious what agencies you were with. You and I had a conversation one time before, and you told me that you had not ever worn a badge. So not certain. Maybe I misunderstood you, but if anybody knows, drop a comment in whether or not James was ever law enforcement. He spent a lot of time in the military, so he knows stuff. And, he could have affected arrest, but he's tired of cops that treat us like we don't know the laws, is what he says. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if James could actually articulate what took place from the beginning to the end and what he would say about unlawful seizures under the Fourth Amendment. But we're going to show this picture real quick here. I want you to know James and kind of part of who James runs, what circles he runs in. Do we have that photo?
We do. There it is.
So James is in the lower left-hand side, seated with the goatee and glasses. James is sitting right next to North Idaho News and other journalist, Mike Petum.
He's a press release artist, a bouncer, a social media poster, a video editor, an in-shot video editor. Yeah. And he monetizes the North Idaho News Facebook page. So
you have Kootenai Journal and you have North Idaho News, along with Special Deputy County Commissioner Bruce Matari, former campaign manager of the man himself, Robert Bob Norris. So anyway, that's you guys can tell me whether or not that was a fail or a success. Was James able to affect the result that he wanted by disrupting a meeting and getting arrested and charged when the lady at the town hall, Dr. Borenpole, was charged, but then they dropped the charges?
Do you think you're being a little hard on James? Is he just a nice guy, a veteran that we should respect, or is there history there?
I appreciate it. Thank you for your service. No, I mean, James has gone out of his way to be an extremely divisive individual. He likes to mean mug people, and he's Tactical Tommy. So, I mean, we're supposed to, I guess, be concerned of his tactical prowess. All right, we have a call.
We're going to give it a try, and I think this might be Ed. Are you there with us?
Now, is it working this time?
It is. You're on with Dan.
All right. Hey, I don't really know where to come in. I spoke with, I guess I can say, Elsa. You mentioned that she's off today. You told me kind of the topics and some of the issues that will be discussed tonight. In particular, I went through the farce of the rating and bidding and have experience with that. And of course, anything I say about it is just because they didn't endorse me and the like. But I have to tell you, I just before this watched your part one of your pastor series, and I've been watching. We've had our issues. Okay, we've never met, but you blocked me and did an FOI me and things like that, which we really kind of wonder and the like. But I have to admit that I've been watching a lot of you, and nobody agrees 100% of everything that you say, but I think you're on the right track in relation to a lot of the things that are very concerning here in the county. Especially, you talk about, voted for Trump 3 times. I consider myself a Ronald Reagan, very conservative guy, and they're calling me Rhino and stuff like that just because I don't. Nobody likes it when I say it, but it's an analogy, goose step to the party line.
Yeah.
And people, you said it about, people look back on their laurels because Trump's in office now. And that's what's going on nationally. For the most part, I agree with it. We have a big problem here in the county with apathy of the long-time residents in particular, who have been caught sleeping these last 3, 5, 7 years. Well, Regan has manipulated a lot of new people to take over the KCRCC, and we've seen what's happened when his people have gotten to dirty in several instances, and I believe we're at a tipping point in many. Years ago, Regan said he wanted our people in every position, and they're getting it because of the apathy. How we, however you want to call it, needs to motivate and wake up that roughly 60% of the people who don't vote in the off-year elections. That's the key. And real quick, and then I'll shut up here. I'm related to pastor series. I think everybody knows who we're talking about here. It's not the only one. There are a couple different churches, and I don't know if like I listen about 1.5 series, but the a church over in Post Falls I know, and some others here in the area that are placing their people into positions that are very concerning with what direction to take us.
Yeah, Ed, I really appreciate your call, and I will be looking forward. I sent you an email earlier this week. I don't know that you received it, so that we can maybe start at ground zero again. I think I originally blocked you because you were making comments that I lost the election by a landslide and needed to move on. So after several times that's when I hit the block. So I'll probably lift that block. You and I can start over. But no, you're exactly right. We're going to talk about this in more detail at the end. What happens when you allow power to become absolute with just one faction?
Thanks for your call, Ed.
Yeah, thanks. And so we are going to be talking about that. I'm going to get through this next talk on LPRs. We're going to go through it really fast because I don't spend much more time. We want to get to our special guests, Dan and Elsa from Watchmen Ministries. But we have been fighting since last year LPR technology, that is license plate reader or automatic license plate reader technology. You can go back to many of our live streams where I've addressed my concerns with the surveillance state. And recently, I believe it was just four episodes ago, I talk again and dispel the lies that Bob Norris claims that I was lying about. And I brought the receipts and showed him that the LPR data is not safe. We showed a kid back in December live streaming his ability to hack into Motorola LPR Vigilant software. So I'm opposed to the surveillance state. Anytime you hear officer safety, I roll my eyes. I was a cop for 12 years. I was one of the most vigilant cops that worked on our department. But I will tell you that we do not base everything in law enforcement solely off of officer safety. If we did, your rights in the community would be lost. There is a reason that the founders came back and amended the Constitution before it was ratified to specifically call out the rights of the people that the government is bound to protect and uphold. So the LPRs today were passed, or excuse me, I guess that was a day ago. We're going to play this video real quick here. It's about 3 minutes. We're going to breeze through it. Then we're going to get to our special guest. But I want you to see the final vote and kind of some of the discussion between the county commissioners. Let's go ahead and watch that clip.
I believe that we are going to be very strict and obviously aware within our community and our sheriff's office about any attempts at abuse.
Hopefully this sets the stage for the local jurisdictions. That, you know, all the other patrol cars and a lot of the other local jurisdictions, they are already outfitted with this technology. And so I think this board is very clear on what it wants from the sheriff's office. And so we hope that you do that, present a good case a year from now. But it doesn't stop with the county. It really begins with the county because of all the other cities that already have this technology.
And another glance of truth and happiness that we might be able to have is Donald J. Trump. Mm-hmm. And so can he do anything about it? Let's see what he can do.
He's certainly reviewing quite a few things at this point, so
yeah.
See if this crosses his plate. I do know that there's been case
Wouldn't
law.
Surprise me. I think he's been over there. Yeah.
Not close enough to see the work going on, but yeah.
Well,
to the chair's point, there's
a lot to do.
There has been case law. Most of the case law up to this point has suggested that license plates in and of themselves being collected it's not a Fourth Amendment violation. That's been the interpretation of the Supreme Court thus far. The surveillance from that particular Virginia city was a different application of the readers. But again, that's been the interpretation of the Supreme Court to this point, is that the collecting of the plates themselves is not. Now, can that change? Absolutely. And obviously, if it does, we will need to readdress our usage of that.
the Supreme Court, I don't trust them as far as I can spit.
I can understand
except
that.
for a couple guys.
I can understand it.
Well, unless there's anything else, want to make a motion?
Yeah, I just, again, want to reiterate that, I mean, this is not my first choice for sure. I would rather no data be collected. I think that it would be, it'll be interesting to see how much return on investment that we are able to get, how many plates and people we're able to turn over. And I just very much expect it's a good policy, and I expect the Sheriff's Department will adhere to it faithfully and with that 30-day retention change. So, yeah. I'll make a motion.
Go for it.
I move that we approve the amendment to the software contract, quote, with the ALPR software.
Do I have a second?
No, you don't.
Second. With the understanding that if we decide a year from now there is no value for data retention after day 0, we can make that adjustment. You know, we can not fund it for the following year if there's not a good enough case being made. So,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Everline,
Name?
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chair Matari.
aye. Motion carries.
And I hope you get her all done too.
All right. So a couple quick things here.
Glad that you're there and keep trying.
What you saw is Lieutenant Headland, who
That concludes the business. Next up is public
wrote
comment.
most of the records request responses for the LPRs that I requested. He was up there to try to answer questions that the commissioners might have had. It comes down to this. Matari, he talks about, Chairman Matari says that, look, you know, we need to have policies in place Well, you're exactly right. You should have had those policies in place before Dan Wilson brought them up to you in August publicly after you've been using them for months after months after months in demo mode with no policies. You nincompoops. So now you're waxing on. You're now convinced. And hats off, Mark Eberline. Hats off to Mark Eberline for having the courage to say, I don't like this. It's a violation of people's constitutional rights. Hedlund tries to say, well, Supreme Court's ruled, hasn't ruled on everything. And you, sir, should probably brush up on your Google foo, because I found far more examples than your one examples of the LPR by Motorola. Their data being breached, being hacked, being used by law enforcement where it should not have been used in violation of people's privileged information. Now, Chairman Duncan, I'm shocked. I'm curious why you decided, when you appeared to be against it, from all rumors that I heard from those that are close to you, said that you were against it. Why would you vote for it? Is it because they sweet talked you over the 30-day retention policy versus the year? Well, maybe we can have you on Liberty Without Compromise here in the next week or so, and you can tell us why you decided to vote to reward Bob Norris. You remember Bob Norris that berated you in that December 23rd Board of County Commissioner meeting? Do you remember when he talked down to you? The sheriff thought he was going to dress you down being a misogynist. Did you forget that? What did they promise you? Why would you turn? You had Mark Eberline that had your 6. And now here it is, a year. But it's all for officer safety because, in Kootenai County, the deputies every single day are surrounded by mass murderers and missing people. And you know what? The means justify the ends. So that's all I got to say on it.
All right. Now we're going to have a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back with our special guests. Light up that cigar. Stella's Stogies is your one-stop shop for all things cigars. Located on historic Main Street in Spirit Lake, Stella's Stogies believes that there's nothing quite like enjoying a good cigar with friends. That's why they're there to help you pick the perfect cigar. Stella's has a great selection of cigars, cigar accessories, and information about cigars, making it easy for you to find just what you're looking for. Owners Brad and Lisa are passionate about cigars and are committed to providing you with the best possible cigar shopping experience. They believe that a good cigar is a great way to relax and socialize, and they're excited to share their love of cigars with you. Stella's also does pop-up shops for events, so be sure to ask them about that. Mention that you heard about Stella's Stogies on the Liberty Without Compromise live stream and get 10% off your purchase. Learn more at stellasstogies.com.
And of course, right after the broadcast, like I do every single week, I'm going to join my bride downstairs in the Green Dragon Tavern, the new Green Dragon Tavern, located in Athol, Idaho, for a scotch and a cigar.
Yep.
And my cigar that I get at Stella's Stogie. So speaking of the Green Dragon Tavern, for those of you who several years ago followed us, Donna and I, when we had our podcast prior to entering into politics, we had the Unspoken podcast that's still available online. We would meet down in our cigar lounge that has been titled the Green Dragon, and it's been titled the Green Dragon in homage. Is that how you say it? Homage. I always say homage. Homage. Okay,
I
you
don't
say it
know.
right.
But yeah, we broadcast live. At that time, we broadcast live from the new Green Dragon Tavern.
And of course, that is where, in many respects, the Revolutionary War was fanned. Those embers. What's this say? The shirt?
Headquarters of the Revolution.
Sam Adams, Paul Revere. I want to put a plug in right now. So these shirts that we are wearing tonight, Don and I, we don't normally dress alike.
No, we usually avoid it.
Are we becoming the seniors that we say we were never going to
It's like, don't do it. Here we are.
My good friend, Darren Rowley of Freedom Elements, sent these shirts today, completely surprised us, but they were a tribute to the Green Dragon Tavern. And I want you guys to follow Darren and go to freedomelements.com. Do I have that website correct?
The website's up. It is freedomelements.com. Looks like you get free standard shipping on orders of $75 or more. And then when you're new to the shop, you get 15% off.
Are you sure they're showing it? My screen's not showing it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, guys. I try to do all the things.
You're better multitasking than me.
It was supposed to be sharing. I'll bring it up later.
So Freedom Elements, Darren Rowley, thank you, brother. I really appreciate these awesome shirts you designed. But check out all of his other freedom, all of the freedom. Why am I'm losing all of my words tonight?
Yeah. It's apparel surrounded by him because I can
freedom
see
inspired.
There it is. So he's got "Don't Tread on Me" hats. In God We Must. Freedom Elements apparel. Appeal to Heaven, which has been a really popular shirt.
Well, I wear a lot of his shirts on this broadcast.
You do, yeah. Oh. You've been his number one fan.
All right, we'll bring that up towards the end of the show. But right now, it's time that we introduce our special guest.
So Watchmen Ministry North Idaho combines faith and public policy and serves to educate, equip, engage, and encourage the church to stand for righteousness in the public square. As part of this mission, they seek to educate Kootenai County voters from a biblical and Christ-centered worldview. The Watchmen Ministry accomplishes this by routinely distributing informative legislative briefings, hosting special events to address specific topics and issues, and then also producing and distributing voter guides during each election cycle. These nonpartisan voter guides feature the answers to a survey that each candidate receives. The survey questions are identical based on the specific office that's being sought. And then Watchmen also conducts video interviews with each candidate. Those who choose to respond to the invitation for the interview, those are then published to their website for all Kootenai County voters to review. As Watchmen Ministry established themselves here in North Idaho, they were initially met with open arms by local church leaders and some central committee members. However, after a series of publicly hosted events, they began to get some pushback from local church leaders and members of the KCRCC. Now, after much consideration, Watchmen recently released the following statement that has been met with controversy on social media. And here is just a part of what they've shared, and then this is going to allude to the conversation we're about to have. So that statement is, over the years, we have been attacked, not by Democrats or people who oppose our conservative views. We've been attacked by other Republicans. We have been attacked by Christians. The most vicious attacks, lies, and gossip have come from some local Christians. Hard to believe, but it's true. A very outspoken local Christian woman has continued to lie and spread misinformation because we would not allow her to be part of our ministry. Her behavior somehow justified under the cloak of Christianity, conveniently forgetting to do justly. A local pastor has resorted to gossip about us and our ministry because we would not cave to his demands. Yes, you heard that right. A well-known pastor in the area. How can a man who stands before his congregation as a godly man justify his behavior to attack us? He can't. But he has continued to attack with lies and exaggerations over the last 3 years. So tonight we've got Dan and Elsa of Watchmen Ministry. They're here to discuss their experience in this local political arena. And why don't you two, I'm going to pull you up on the screen. I'm trying to do double duty here and make sure I unmute your mic. And we want to welcome you guys. Why don't you begin by sharing with us how things got started with your ministry in Kootenai County compared to the battles that you're now up against?
Sure. We have actually been considering disclosing some of this information for quite some time. We had prayed about it. We had considered hiring an attorney. We had thought about a lot of different ways that we could handle this. And we wanted to be the bigger person and not release it. But as things have continued, after 3 years, they still continue to spread. Over this last situation with my post, I just had to reveal some of that. And in full disclosure, we had never met Dan and Dawna Wilson up until the day that we met at my office to do our candidate interview. So for those of you that might be thinking that we're traitors and we're on the wrong side of the issue, we're not. We consider all the candidates have the right to run if they choose to, and we treat them all with dignity and respect. And so in our ministry, I'll start a little bit from the beginning. We have a lot to cover, so you tell me when we need to stop. Why we do our ministry? Well, we believe that voter education is a must. We do candidate interviews, as you said. The voter guides are our main point. When we moved here, we didn't have any source of reliable voter information. We're not used to that. Coming from Southern California, we got a lot of information, especially through our church, where we were involved with. But here we didn't have that. And so I think God was nudging us. And finally we decided, okay, it's time to go. It's time to do something. We keep looking for somebody else to do it, so why not us? And so we did. So we also put out a weekly newsletter. It's a lot of time commitment, right? But we're dedicated to the cause. We feel like we moved multiple states away. We want this to work out. We love this community. We love our county. We love Idaho. And so the newsletter, action alerts, especially during legislation that's coming through. But the voter guides is the main thing. We spend an average of $5,000 to $6,000 per election. So that's $10,000 to $12,000 per year that we can spend on ourselves, on vacations, spoiling our grandchildren. So I don't say this lightly with what we're going to share. My point is that we invest and put our money where our mouth is, and we have dedicated time, resources, and even through very tired evenings when it's crunch time and we have to produce those voter guides, because we truly believe that presenting a voter guide from a Christian worldview is important. We welcome everyone to participate. And like I told one candidate that didn't want to fill it out, she said, well, if I fill out your questionnaire, it's going to want to make me look bad. And I said, so do you not have your own base? Do you not have your own supporters? And she says, of course I do. Well, then you should do it so that they see who you are, right? In all fairness, if someone wants to vote for her, they should. Our goal is statesmen. We want to find those true servants that are not going to be compromised. That's what we look for. And that's where our time is mostly dedicated. We are as conservative as they come, evangelical Christians. So for those that are going to attack us and criticize, I say check your Christianity and check your values first. Like one woman told me on Facebook, I think wisdom is lacking. I would say you need to pray first or something like that. And I'm thinking, well, when you give that advice, you have to start with that first. First pray before you criticize, and you tell everybody how their walk with the Lord needs to be, right? So Reagan type Republicans, and this is not our first rodeo. We've been at this for the last 17 years, very, very politically active, continuously. We have really not.
And we started in California before we left Southern California, and we continue to be involved with ministry in Southern California.
Right. We have not stopped that ministry that we began to be a part of since 2007, and we continue to do work. In fact, we do work for that ministry on a weekly basis. So we mean what we say. We want for godly leadership to come into positions of authority. So now, into what led up to this is a current KCRCC event at Town Hall in February, the little debacle that happened there. I don't agree with Teresa Borenthal and maybe the way she handled it, but here's what I observed. First of all, she was not the only one. There were others. And I didn't even post about that. My post was regarding the fact that the security guards did not have any proper identification on them. And it turns out that, as you all know, the city of Coeur d'Alene requires that. Not only that, but she asked multiple times. And the fact that she was treated the way she was treated, she was not the only one heckling. And what if I voice my opinion? Am I going to be dragged out of an event, very likely so, especially after this this podcast. But my point is that, where are the men that saw that happen? Where are the good Christian people that I know were there? Why didn't they not try to diffuse the situation? And
they were cheering. They were clapping and screaming. It was mob. It was a mob rule.
And I'm going to cover some of that. And again, we've seen this happen over and over again. But I didn't criticize Sheriff Norris. I didn't criticize the KCRCC. I just pointed that out. And of course, the comments start coming in and people get defensive. They forget the facts. They don't want to hear them. They just want to criticize and defend their own, right? So after that, I put North Idaho Republicans posted a post in which, and Daniel will read it, I agree 100%. It was with grace. It was well presented, and it was simple and to the point. And Daniel can read that.
Yeah, you would think we had committed treason based on the responses to this. So the post says North Idaho Republicans support free speech, whether one likes what is being said or not. NIR condemns the dreadful manner in which the events at the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee Legislative Town Hall were handled, which clearly appears to include the assault of a woman attendee. We believe President Trump was elected to put an end to cancel culture, not to flip it from the left to the right to do the canceling. In this Trump-Musk era of increased accountability, NIR believes the event organizers and its leadership should be held accountable. Shouldn't be that complicated, and it should be something that most people can certainly agree with. But it's sad to see how quickly I guess you might say, they circle the wagons to protect their own.
And in this case, I 100% agree with that post. And that's what I said, 100% agree. Doesn't mean that I agree with them with everything they do. And I certainly don't agree with everything the KCRCC does. And we're going to cover some of those things. But it's shameful that they think that we've switched sides. And one person said that, you're on the wrong side. Well, wait a minute. These are our own community members. These are citizens within our county, our city, our state. How are they our enemy? One city council member in our church that we currently attend, during an announcement, and this was not in my notes, but I'll share it because I think it's relevant. He stood up and gave an announcement and said, the enemies, and this was during, I forget, one of the upcoming elections last year. I think it was when the North Idaho Republicans had their candidates. He called them their enemies, his enemies, and our enemies. And I'm thinking, well, speak for yourself. These are my community members. And how dare you, as a sitting city council member, speak of those that don't agree with you as your enemy? Is that correct Christian behavior, especially in a church? I don't think so. You want to cover some of the rest?
Sure. I think the thing that we see is our big concern is that we see that politics is becoming an idol for a lot of people. Not everyone, but you can see kind of how this all fits together. There was a recent article written by Greg Graff, and he identified the playbook that is pretty consistently being used, which is to discredit the source, you shift the focus, and attack anyone who dares to demand accountability. I'm sure, Dan, that you have experienced that that playbook yes. Probably quite a few times. Yes. And our personal experience with some of the local Republican Central Committee members reflects some of those tactics. Back in February of 2021, we hosted an event at one of the local churches. Two members of the KCRC, Don Broadway and Jeff Tyler, wanted to distribute propaganda from the Central Committee at our event. Don knew that he could not distribute this material at our event because it would violate IRS 501c3 rules. In fact, this had actually been explained to Don a total of 4 times on 4 separate occasions. So he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that what he was doing was wrong. So Jeff Tyler initially made a request, and Elsa told him no, and told him why. Jeff kind of went to Don, and Don decided to go around Elsa and went to a lady who was helping with the event, and basically claimed that he wanted to be able to pass out those flyers, and the lady had told Don, well, no, you need to check with Elsa.
So I'll speak on this because this turned into a huge debacle that went on for a little over a month. Don went to the pastor. We'll leave his name out just as a courtesy. But he went to the pastor and demanded that I give him an apology because I called him a liar. So when Don told this other lady that that he was allowed to distribute, I just simply said, no, it's not true. I didn't call him a liar, but it turned into such a huge, huge issue that it went on for over a month, and over time of emails back and forth. And thankfully, we have that all in writing. And again, when I say we've thought about coming public with all of this, we have it all in writing. It's all there, how it happened, what was said, what was not said. The pastor refused to listen to the facts. He just completely dismissive of the facts. He just kept insisting. I'm patient, and he kept insisting as if I'm going to wear you out and you're going to give that apology. But we were standing on principle. And the bottom line is it's three men, between Jeff Tyler, which in all fairness, since we've run into him a few times, and he has been nothing but courteous, as short hello and goodbye. Don and that pastor have been relentless and vindictive. Yeah, and it's unacceptable.
And of course, this pastor I have dealings sort of with as well. And you can hear more about that in our podcast, not the live broadcast, but our podcast series, Power Player Pastors of Kootenai County, because we've dealt with some of these same players. Now, I want to go back and talk about Don Bradway. Now, Don Bradway is a staple to all Kootenai County Republican Central Committee events, whether it is the Reagan Republicans or the Pachyderms or whatever. He is oftentimes found being the master of ceremonies for these town hall events. And he's always wears a big Hawaiian shirt, and he happens to be a board member of the National Rifle Association. So he's a guy that should know better when it comes to distributing material that is clearly offline. And there's this mentality that seems to be that nobody's going to challenge us, so we'll push the limit, we'll pass things out, and we're always going to get covered because we have the firepower to be able to refute, defend whatever our actions are, and the rules do not apply to us. So I want to make certain I understand that correctly. Sounds like Jeff Tyler was doing the right thing. He respected it and was not facilitating this. And, disclosure to all, Jeff came out and publicly supported me, not in his official capacity, but in his private capacity. And Dorothy Moon, the state Republican chair, came back and within 72 hours, in fact, it's probably 48 hours, told him he had to take down his personal endorsement of me for the sheriff's race. This is how tyrannical these people are. But Jeff's always been really good to me. I like Jeff. Jeff's a outstanding, upright guy. But Don likes to bloviate a lot, and it sounds like that he was attempting to literally throw his weight around.
Yes. And so again, to be clear, the conversation started with Jeff, but once I said no and I explained why, and he said, well, Don said, I said no, he's well aware. Again, we stick our neck out for the ministry. What we don't want is to find ourselves in an unnecessary legal battle because we overlooked the IRS 501c3 rules, which is what we abide by. We're happy to do this, but we don't need to look for that in trouble with the IRS. So he backed away, and again, he's been courteous. But Don has been nonstop. In fact, I didn't have it on my notes, but it's worth sharing now. We were at a mutual friend's Christmas party a few years back, and Don was invited, and so were we. He was surprised that we were there. You can see in his demeanor. And even after all that happened, this is, sometime later, and in a public setting, I thought is the courteous thing is to say hello and start small talk. Well, it turns out that after the event, he was very angry with the host because she had dared to invite us after what we had done to him. What did we do, Don? We didn't do anything. And in fact, when we hosted our first sheriff's forum, there were several candidates that refused to participate in our forum if Don was going to be the moderator. So we ended up having Daniel be the moderator. And so I think those two things just, in his mind, his big ego and vindictive behavior just got in the way. And I hate to say that because, again, this is a fellow Christian. We did not get attacked by the left. They have been polite and courteous. Hopefully that will continue because if for no other reason than we treat people with dignity as another fellow human being.
Yeah. No, I think you bring up great points. And I think that it was shocking to me, although in retrospect, I should have expected it. But the people that have been the most vile to Donna and I, but me specifically since I was running last year, were the people at the KCRCC that were tightly in that group. I mean, you talk about Don in that group that he was in. We were back in, I don't know, it was close to the election. And there was we went to a Larry Elder event. He was speaking and the table adjacent was Don and several other staples of the Republican Central Committee goers, I guess, if you will, attenders. And I was shocked. I had spoken to them at their history club several months earlier, had a great rapport. Many of them came up and said, we hadn't given you a fair chance. We believed the lies that were being told about you. And now, after hearing what you had to say, we understand your message and we support that message. Well, less than, not even a month later, I'm sitting at a table adjacent to theirs. I get up to try to shake Don and a couple of the other guys' hands, and they want nothing to do with me. And it is the most bizarre thing. Having come from Spokane, where I thought politics were dirty over there, people will still be your enemy and come over and shake your hand. But this whole group over here, this cult that it's become, it is completely blown my mind.
And
it cannot be ignored.
Dan, with Watchmen Ministry, I know that you had an outlook on that when we see how defensive this organization has become, KCRCC, how defensive they were with you really from the onset, and then also with the pastor of this local church, and you had some insights into that.
Yeah, I think it comes down to it's where people are actually making politics an idol. And if you think about it, an idol is anything that is placed above the lordship of Jesus Christ in your life. And if you follow, for example, Todd Friel, I think, has probably the best statement, which is that our hearts are little idol factories. Jeremiah says the heart is deceitfully wicked. Who can know it? It's important to know that idols have to be defended. Truth doesn't need to be defended. St. Augustine actually says truth is like a lion. You don't need to defend it. You just need to let it loose.
And before we move on to other things, I wanted, and you're right on that, something that is significant and which had us, number one, we left that church, and we were so grieved that for about 3 months we didn't go to any church. We didn't know what to do. We can't believe this is happening, especially from our dear pastor whom we loved. And I can't believe he has treated us this way. But to make matters worse is as soon as he came back from vacation, because when I sent him the email, I believe he was on vacation, he went before the Ministerial Association. And before everyone that was in attendance asked them, have you seen Dan and Elsa? They said no. And he told them, if they show up at your church, have them come back to me because they left unfinished business. There was no unfinished business. This was a way of preventing us from going to another church because he wanted to bring us back and, I believe, apply church discipline on a matter that was so minuscule that got way blown out of proportion. And it's sad to me that, with the exception of one pastor, everyone else didn't have the courage to say, hey, wait a minute, pastor. If they decide to come out to our church, they're going to be welcome, just like everybody else. We're not just a nobody. We've been Christians for a long time. And to the thought that this pastor wanted to prevent us from going to church. And so I asked myself, how can a man who's a senior pastor of such a large church resort to gossip? And it reminded me of when you posted your podcast revealing a certain pastor. He said, can I tell you what I heard? And I'm thinking, oh boy, do you hear the hissing of the snake in that statement? Yeah. Do we not? That is straight up gossip. How can a pastor say that? Continue to spread gossip. But yet our personal experience has been exactly that. How can you justify this under your Christian experience? It seems like pride and anger clouded his judgment. And the sad thing is that we're not the only ones that he has done this to. I don't like presenting secondhand experience, but we have talked to another person who he did very similar and also sabotaged his ministry with other churches. And again, I would plead with those other pastors, think for yourselves, check it with scripture. This behavior does not line up with scripture. And to those board members of that church, if you know that there's a continuous type of behavior with this pastor, at the very least, it is your responsibility to address it. Address it. Amen. We could have, if we felt like we were going to be treated fairly. At one point, he wanted us to have a meeting with Don. The only way I would have had a sit-down meeting with Don was going to be before an attorney, because a person that is willing to lie, gossip, and exploit things the way he did is not to be trusted. It's really that simple. And I was not about to put myself in that situation. This reminded us of Deuteronomy 16:18. Do you want to read that?
Yeah, and I think the key verse is verse 19. You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show partiality, nor take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous.
Exactly.
And the thing is that, going back to their playbook, first thing they did, just try to discredit the source, try to shift the blame to something else. If you think about it, it's the same thing that we see in national politics. The media does this all the time. That you hear the phrase "Republicans pounce," to shift the blame away from what was done and to put the blame on the group that actually pointed out the bad behavior.
So on the reason I called Ed DePriest, because I wanted him to know that we were going to mention him. And so in all fairness, I wanted to give him some warning. So it leads to the fact that on several occasions we have been contacted, most of the time through phone calls, so I don't have the actual email or evidence when it's a phone call. Maybe we should resort to only text and email going forward. But we were contacted, for example, one example. When Dave Riley was running, one person was wanting us to remove Dave Riley from our voter guide because he didn't agree with him, and he thought that our voter guide made him look good. And we said, no, we cannot. In our fairness, it's a nonpartisan voter guide. We're not going to do it. And then on another occasion, Beverly Gwinnett sent me an email, and we'll read it in a minute, wanting to remove, well, she didn't ask to be removed, but clearly she was in very high opposition on the fact that Ed DePriest, his answers were on our voter guide. And the lady that they were, what was her name, that they were supporting? Barnett was one that they were supporting. Now, we were told that she was a pro-choice. We don't know that firsthand. But Ed had responded, he didn't think it was an appropriate question for the questionnaire for his position, but still he responded, and he was pro-life. And so Dan will read a little bit of that email.
So Beverly's email starts out, your endorsement of Ed DePriest against the KCRCC endorsement of his opponent, Nicole Barnett, will split the conservatives in Hayden, thereby making Democrat Panna Baker the winner. This is back to conservative foolishness that has helped to lose us this country. And Elsa pointed out that
We'll just read it word for word.
That, we had, that Nicole had the opportunity to respond, but she chose not to do it. And so she responds again, with your list having Ed on it and the KCRCC having Nicole on it, chances are very good that Democrat Panna Baker will win since the conservative vote will be split. We've been trying to avoid that Republican stupid attitude. We did that for 2 election cycles. Now we're back to that. And Elsa responds, to be clear, we're not a PAC. We are a ministry. We do not associate with any political party. We encourage full participation from all the candidates. Your candidate chose not to respond. How you see or perceive it is entirely up to you. And your comments on Republican stupid attitude is irrational and rude. And she finishes it off with, the Republican stupid attitude is mainly the Democrats have been successful at ruining this country.
So you can see her tone even through her writing, right? And it's so typical of, or at least what our experience has been, that she can come across as very pushy, very demanding. And I'll share just to, this, one could argue this is just a one incident. We've heard a lot of other incidences with her, but I'll share briefly one that we had. In one of our events, we had a guest speaker that came from California to speak, and it was a great event. During the event, we found that there was a local family that needed, Karen thought needed legal help because of the situation they found themselves. Because there's a minor involved, we won't mention too many details. And so Karen, our friend Karen, took it upon herself to talk to some of the well-known national law firms, to talk to them personally, directly to one of the attorneys, asked if they would take the case pro bono. They did. Beverly got involved, and she was livid because, according to her, Karen and I wanted a piece of the action. Well, first of all, Beverly, I was not involved in that at all. So you misspoke on something you didn't know about, and Karen had good intentions. So I would say, if you go out there to try to help Billy Bop or Betty Boop, whatever, don't do it because you want the attention. If you do it because you want the attention, then your intentions aren't good. And so that was just one of several. On a different occasion, and Dan, you tell me when we need to stop because I know we're running a little bit late. Do you want us to?
Donna will be our timekeeper.
Will tell us. Okay.
Okay.
So again, the hypocrisy of wanting, like the video you played earlier, right? They want the left to behave in a certain way, but they turn a blind eye when their own does the bad behavior. So I witnessed Terry Seymour acting the way she did with Dan Gukin. I was there. It was awful.
That's right. Yeah, and we've played that clip on the live stream.
Yes.
And Elsa was there at that luncheon.
Yes, and what's sad is that when she did what she did, the majority of the people cheered her on and agreed with her. And it's really shocking to me that, wait a minute, you see something wrong being perpetrated and you can't think for yourself. You just have to applaud with the ones that applaud and cheer with the ones that cheer. I mean, where's your self-governance, right? And why are you in agreement? And so why invite candidates to a candidate forum if you have no intention on letting them speak freely? I think you need to rethink that, right? Yeah. And what was really telling was that at the end, the whole program continued. And then Terry, towards the end, made some final announcements. So she got the mic again. I wouldn't have let her pick up the mic again after that, but she did. And then she said, it's not my fault. God made me this way. So I thought, okay, so now we know where your Christianity is, because how dare you blame God for your bad behavior, my bad behavior? I mean, we have to take some accountability.
Yeah, that would be called sin nature.
Yes.
Not I have license to do what I want because God made me this way. But no, that would be sin nature.
You know,
Yes.
it's become apparent to me, and this is where I think maybe you guys will or won't agree, but when we look at our country as citizens of the United States, we are Americans. Those of us that are of faith are of faith, and we understand when you call Jesus your Lord and Savior, what that means. That means that he is first and foremost in everything in your life, as imperfect as we are, as imperfect as I do. We oftentimes have to step back and go, guess what? Government and our faith are not necessarily aligned, meaning that when our country was founded, you had a commonality between there at that time belief in a higher power. You had the same moral standards back in those days, but we are a post-Christian nation now. And so while I applaud exactly what you guys are doing, because you are putting your faith on display, saying we want people that share our values as Americans. We want righteousness by people that are self-governing to be in positions of leadership. Yep. There are those right now in the KCRCC that think that they are going to cram down their view of what Christianity is, whether it's their Catholic version, whether it's their Protestant version, whether it's their Mormon version. They're going to cram that down everybody's throats, whether or not they want it or not, because they know best. And you're seeing this, and it's complete tyranny, and the founders rejected it. Jesus rejected it. Jesus, when he was on earth, did not run around forcing the government at that time to fall and worship him and acknowledge him. We are to be that light. We are to be that salt, and we are to change our culture. The culture right now is the way it is because of the churches.
Yes, completely agree.
If you want to look at the reflection of who we have now, and whether or not you're extremely angry that we can have drag shows or whatever else, that I personally, my personal worldview, I'm not into that. I don't want to see that behavior, but it is now legal. And it is that way. Our founders said, look, this government is for a moral and righteous people. And the same thing that protects us now in this culture protects those that have an opposite worldview. So it's very dangerous when you get the people in power. My belief, again, the Brent Reagans, the Terry Seymours, the Nina Beasleys, the Don Bradfords, whether or not they hold positions of leadership, but they're that group, the Bruce Mataris, the Bob Norrises, go on and on and on. They are only open to those that have drunk their Kool-Aid. They don't want anybody else coming in, and they've become the very enemy that they claim that they speak against. They are just the right version of the left, complete tyrannical group that has destroyed this country.
So that then made Watchmen Ministry a threat from the get-go. Now, I know we're open to having you guys on again. Why don't you give us some of the things that you've still got really important on your plate to kind of wrap this up?
So we'll just make a couple of closing statements. I think more than anything, we had 5 pages worth of notes and we skipped through a lot of it. Trust me when I say we did not take this lightly. We sat last night and went through our notes and added, removed, and only what we felt was absolutely necessary. And speaking of Nina Beasley, we had some stuff there that we could have shared also. But again, for the sake of time, I guess she just dodged it. So,
coming up on the next episode.
Speaking of terrible, unacceptable behavior. So, just some final thoughts. You want to read the 10 Commandments and what it says, just to be clear.
Yeah, and I think this really is important to kind of note from that perspective. So if we look at Exodus 20, and God spoke all of these words, saying, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth." This is referring to idolatry.
which is what we see this has become. And so how the people that are hearing this receive the message, I think will be very telling of their worldview. They can either start thinking for themselves and rationalize. And if you get defensive and can't accept that someone, of course, not everyone, full disclosure, not everyone in the Central Committee behaves this way, and there's some good people in there, no doubt.
Agreed.
No doubt.
Yes.
How the Central Committee has abused their position, then you're making them an idol. If you refuse to see the serious problems associated with the current Central Committee leadership, then you're making those leaders an idol. If you see nothing wrong with the behavior of this pastor that we have mentioned, and again, as a courtesy, we've left his name out, then you're making that pastor an idol. No question about it. If you think that your political side must win at all costs, regardless of who they derail in the process, then you're making politics an idol. And that was the point of us discussing. And then one last thing that Daniel wanted to read, and we will cut it short.
So we were privileged to be able to spend some time at a course taught by Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council, and his thought on this was it's important that we have the Word of God, that we know the Word of God, that we teach the Word of God in its application to all aspects of life, and that includes government.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And we will post that later.
Okay. Perfect. This is Dan and Elsa from Watchmen Ministry. You can learn more on their website at Watchmen Ministry North Idaho.com. I also put that link in the comments section for those of you who want to reference that. We thank you guys. I know it took a lot of boldness, and it came with a lot of thought. Like you said, you put a lot of thought into it, had a lot going into it, and your own time and treasure at
it's
stake.
tough when you've been bullied.
Yes.
When you are doing a righteous thing, you are attempting to live out, sacrifice time, resources, reputation to do what you folks have been doing. And I just want to applaud you. I hope the folks out there who have not been familiar with their organization, if you are people of faith, this resource right here in Kootenai County is a very important thing for you to be looking at. To look at the hard work so that you can disseminate. Look, every organization is going to have their different criteria for what they want out of candidates. This one is a faith-based, so it gives you the ability to scroll through and figure out what are the worldviews of the people that choose to respond. They're not, as they said earlier, they're not picking who they're endorsing. They're letting the candidates speak for themselves. I want to play, before you guys get off, I want to put up our quote of the week by a founder and get your final comments on this before we let you go. We have John Adams, one of the greatest founders, third president. I'm going to forget now.
Third.
There you go.
He's the one with the history major and minor.
I'm not saying anything.
How profound when he says this: mankind will in time discover that unbridled majorities are as tyrannical and cruel as unlimited despots. And, KCRCC, unbridled majorities.
Yeah.
If you don't get your house in order, you are going to completely dive. It will crumble from within. Those that are in the KCRCC right now with an open mind, as what Dan and Elsa have said, I challenge you to start being bold, to stand up and quit this whole, we're just going to acquiesce, we're just going to go along, we don't want to create waves, we don't want to be uninvited. Remember, many of you are elected by your local neighborhood. Have a backbone. Exactly. Stand up and make a difference. And by the way, Dan Gookin, Chrissy Woodward, I'm forgetting some of those names. Mark Stewart. I've come to have great conversations with some of these folks. Doesn't mean that I understand and agree with everything they have to say, but part of people of faith is we listen to others. We listen to them. We use every opportunity, because there is a lot of truth. Just because we may not agree with somebody's worldview at that moment does not mean that they're complete fools.
No, it doesn't.
I think that we can learn a lot, and it keeps us centered as well. So any final thoughts?
Persuasion. We're to operate by, the same way our faith operates, and then Dan can finish up. But I think you watch Charlie Kirk, for instance, how he does it. It's an excellent example. He goes in the colleges. Most of those that come before the mic disagree with him very strongly. But you watch, he treats them with dignity, respect, listens to them. And what does he do next? Try to get them to think and persuade them. That's how we should do faith. That's how we lead people to Christ, by persuasion.
And I think the thing that really, as we talked about making politics an idol, we all have to check our heart because the heart is deceitfully wicked, and all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. When we preach the gospel, we need to be preaching the gospel by words, by actions, by deeds, by attitudes, by every aspect
our conduct.
By our conduct, by every aspect of our lives. And that is what we hope to do, what we try to do with this ministry, with everything that we have.
We are not perfect by any means, but our intentions are that to serve our community wholeheartedly. We wanted to succeed. And I've said this before in some of our meetings. We did not move multiple states away and away from family and my grandbabies to be in a state that is going to turn the way of California. So this is the way we, in our opinion, we're helping.
Great.
So thank you, guys.
Well, we are so thankful for your guys' dedication, your sacrifice. We've appreciated getting to know both of you as well and your hearts. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, sharing those intimate details that are not always easy to come out and to tell the public what's going on. But I applaud your courage. And that's what it takes right now is people in Kootenai County standing up like Dan and Elsa, making a difference, to influence their community. God bless you guys. I'm really appreciative of you coming on and for your example.
And another one who has stood up is Darren over at Freedom Elements. And I had a failure in sharing the screen, but we're doing that here now, where he supplied those shirts that Dan and I are wearing tonight. And he's got all of these incredible freedom echoing, resounding apparel. Mm-hmm. And Dan's got probably every shirt. Yeah. Loved every shirt.
I love them all.
So visit him at freedomelements.com.
I love shows like this where we can be inspired, challenged by Dan and Elsa. These are salt of the earth people, no pretension. They are kind. They are inspiring. And I just want to encourage, there are many other Dan and Elsas in this community and around the region, around the world. What are you doing right now? Are you resting securely on your couch, watching your Netflix, scrolling your feed? What are you doing to preserve your liberty without compromise? Are you getting a small voice, the still small voice telling you need to get more involved? You need to go to town halls. You need to be that voice of opposition that does not go along with the mob. I am so appalled, as we have talked about several times tonight in several examples, of the mob mentality of those that go to these Republican events. Disgusting, abhorrent. And then you have James Clayton and his foul-mouthed tirade against the chief of Coeur d'Alene, because, of course, when you're an inarticulate buffoon that's married to somebody that owns a newspaper that claims to represent conservatives in Kootenai County, and you can't even control your husband and his mouth, you see what buffoons are running the show around here. And I say, we did not descend from fearful men. We descended from men who were learned. They were articulate. They knew what they believed in and why they believed in it. They were able to argue that in the town square without James Madison, without Thomas Jefferson, without George Washington, the Constitutional Convention most likely would never have evolved, would have never taken place, and we would find ourselves in a government far different from what we have right now. As imperfect as it is, one thing that the founders were unanimous, what they were unanimous in is the right to free speech. That means that those that you don't like get to say what they want to say. Even Dave Riley, I can't stand listening to him and his ranting and the crap that comes out of his mouth when he hates the people that he hates. Whether he intends to or not, he comes across as a hateful person. But I will defend his right the same as I will defend the right of Dr. Bornpole to speak out against their representatives. I'm calling on all of our elected officials right now to do the right thing and start calling for your own constituents, the people in your own party, the Dorothy Moons, the Brent Reagans, to stop the madness and to start acting like the Americans we are. Be strong and of good courage. Please pray for Matt, who's going through a tough time. Jim's got a lot of medical stuff going on. And of course, my buddy Ron, who is recovering as well. Did I forget anybody?
Well, there's probably, there's a lot that a lot of us that need prayer. Thank you for joining us tonight on the Liberty Without Compromise live stream broadcast. You can visit our website to watch past episodes and view exclusive reports on the Kootenai County political power players. That's at libertywithoutcompromise.com. You can also get your apparel there. And you can subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your shows. I don't know about you, but I'm going to go have my midnight snack, my midday square. The link to get these and get 15% off is in the comment section here.
I'm going to drink some scotch and I'm going to smoke a cigar.
Oh, that sounds great. Let's go.